Hello, my name is Joe Fouts. I am a software engineer here at LIDP Consulting, and in this video I will be showing you a live demonstration on how to deploy and test our Titanium edition of the administrator on an IBM WebSphere JEE application server. The first thing I would like to show you is our demonstration diagram. I will use this diagram to show you all the necessary components that will be used in this demonstration. The first component is our GEM client interface. It is our thick client GUI, and it's used to transmit messages back and forth to the server. The next component is our Titanium client listener. Its job is to receive those messages and convert them to Java objects and then communicate to the JEE application server. The next component is the IBM WebSphere JEE application server. We are currently running version 8.5 and we will be installing Titanium's Enterprise Edition of the administrator on that server. And finally, we have an IBM DB2 Database Server. That database server has all of the Titanium database tables defined and ready to go. The goal of this demonstration, once we deploy the Titanium Enterprise EAR file to the server, is to verify and test the foreground processing, report generation processing, and background processing. This next screen is the IBM WebSphere console, and what I wanted to point out here is that due to time constraints, we went ahead and set up all of the necessary configuration for Titanium using this console. And the things we set up were the Java database connectors, the database connector factories, the data sources, the Java messaging service, along with their providers and all the necessary queues that are used by the Titanium Enterprise system. The next diagram I would like to show you is how we build our deployment EAR files. The deployment EAR file will then be used to deploy to the application server. We have an Ant build script that reads from our source code repository and then compiles all the source code into class files. The class files, along with the build XML files, are then placed into the Titanium Enterprise full EAR file. The full EAR file includes processing for foreground, background, and report generation. This next screenshot from the IBM WebSphere console is what I will be using in the live demonstration to show you how I will then deploy this EAR file to the WebSphere application server. Once all of the components are up and running and the Titanium Enterprise EAR file is deployed and started on the WebSphere application server, the next thing I will do will be to test our foreground processing, our report generation processing, and our background processing. And with that, let's begin our live demonstration. To begin this live demonstration, the first thing I'd like to do is bring up the demonstration diagram. I will use this diagram to go through as I start all of the components necessary for this demonstration. The first component I'd like to talk about is the IBM's DB2 Database Server. This database server is currently up and running, and it has all of the Titanium database tables defined, set up, and ready to go. The next component I'm going to talk about is IBM's WebSphere version 8.5 JEE Application Server. Now to start the IBM WebSphere Application Server, I'm just going to bring up a command prompt, and using their default start server script, I'm going to start the default server 1 and start it with the profile name of AppServe01. And what the profile name AppServe01 does is that it starts the server with a configuration file that we have already pre-set up with for the Titanium Enterprise system. Those settings would include such things as the database and the Java messaging service, any performance settings, and things like that. Now, you can see the command line comes back and tells us that the server 1 is now open for e-business. But what I'd like to do is minimize that window and then bring up our Titanium console. The Titanium console is a in-house utility that we developed that allows us to view the various JEE application server logs. And in this case, I'm going to open up WebSphere's system out log, change it to all messages, refresh it, and what we now see is the log coming out, the logging information coming out of the IBM's WebSphere application server. And as you can see, the last message is server 1 is open for e-business. The next thing I would like to do is show you how to deploy the Titanium Enterprise EAR file to the IBM WebSphere's application server. To do that, we're going to use the WebSphere's server console, and to do that, we're going to bring up a browser, go to the IP address where the server is located, and from this console, we're going to go to Applications, Application Type, WebSphere Enterprise Applications. And it's from this screen is where we can deploy an EAR file for an enterprise application. So to install Titanium's enterprise application, we simply select Install, choose File, and then go to the folder where we have distributed the Titanium Enterprise Applications EAR file. Select it, click Next, we're going to do the fast path, and most of these settings by default will work just fine, so I'm just going to click Next for time constraint reasons. Click Next, and then finally Finish, and this will preload the configuration to the server. We then want to save it to the master configuration file. And now we have our ADMI Enterprise EAR file set up and ready to go. Now it's not running yet, so the next thing we have to do is start it. So we'll start the enterprise application. Now it should come back with a green arrow indicating that the enterprise application is now up and running. I'm going to minimize that for now, and I'm going to talk about the next component. The next component I'm going to start is the Titanium Client Listener, and what this component does is it listens to messages coming from our GEM client interface. The GEM client interface communicates in string messages, and what the Titanium Client Listener's job is to accept those messages, convert them to Java business objects, and then communicate them to the enterprise application running on the IBM WebSphere's JEE application server. So to start the Titanium Client Listener, I'm simply going to click the icon, and as long as we don't see any error messages, the listener has started successfully, and we can now minimize it. The last component I'm going to talk about is the GEM client interface. And to start the client interface, I'm going to click this icon. We now have the GEM client interface up and running and ready to go. So now that we have all of the components up and running, we have the GEM client interface running, the Titanium client listener, the IBM WebSphere JEE application server with LIDP's Titanium edition of the administrator installed and up and running. And we also have the IBM's DB2 Database Server up and running with the Titanium database tables set up and ready to go. So with that, I'm going to begin testing. The first thing I'm going to do is log on to the Titanium Enterprise System using the GEM client interface. This comes back successful, and now I am able to run transactions against the Titanium Enterprise System. The first transaction I'm going to test with is our SIGU transaction, which is our sign-on user maintenance screen. And I will retrieve my operator's record, and it comes back successful. And here you can see I have my operator's information for Faucho, which is me. The next transaction I'm going to run is a contract retrieve. I'm going to retrieve a contract. Now what you'll notice on the Titanium console is that we do have these transactions starting and stopping, showing you that they've started and completed for each one that I've executed. The next thing I want to do is retrieve another policy. And the one thing about this next policy is I want to look at a little information that we are going to be changing later on in the demonstration with our background processing. So if we look at the contract information, I'm going to go to Clients, and I'm going to look at the Simple Man. And if we look at Simple Man's address, we can see that it is 111 Hobson Road in Naperville, Illinois. So that's just something we can remember. I'm going to close these out. And that pretty much shows foreground processing. The next thing I'm going to show you is our report generation processing. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to use our RWGR transaction. And I'm going to retrieve our report extracts for the report ID D-bill. I'm going to select regenerate so that I get all the D-bills out there so that I have enough for this demonstration. We can see there's 119 extracts out there to produce formatted reports for. And in this particular report, we have all format types supported. We have XML, CSV, formatted object, HTML, and PDF. So to produce this report, I'm going to change the function to process, enter a from range and a to range, and press submit. The message we get back to the user is report sent to the report generation process. What this means is that the user can continue on working with their workflow and not have to wait for all these reports to get generated. If we look at the console, what we'll see is that the report formatter has completed successfully. And now if we go ahead and bring up the Titanium Reports folder, what we should see in the folders, let's start with XML. Here's a date and time of 6:48, which is right now. And we can see that this XML formatted report was generated. If I bring it up in the browser, it'll show me the XML in a formatted fashion in the browser. If I go to HTML and select the 6:48 time, you can see the HTML version of that same report coming up in a browser. And then finally, I'll go to the PDF folder and select the 6:48 PDF report, and here you can see our PDF generated report for the D bill. And that pretty much verifies our report generation process. And finally, the last thing I'd like to show you is our background processing. And to show you the background processing, the first thing I'm going to do is start up one of our backgrounds called ADMN. And to do that, I'm going to go to our test transaction where I can manually start a background. And in this case, I'm going to start our ADMN. ADMN is our background maintenance background transaction, and its job is to process any background maintenance records that need to be processed for given contracts, clients, or agents. So I'm going to press submit, and what we should see on the console is that the ADMN master background processing is looking for work. Now that's going to cycle through every so many minutes, and we should see this looking for work. At this time, we don't have any records out there for the ADMN to work on. So from here, I'm going to go to our BGDT transaction, which is our background maintenance record detail screen. And from here, I'm going to retrieve a contract. And the message that comes up says there are no background maintenance records for this contract existing. So I'm going to add one. And I'm going to change the process date to yesterday. And I'm going to select address information. And then from this address information, I'm going to enter name number 1, situation 01. And the client action will be change segment. I'm going to leave it be the billing address type. And if you remember when I retrieved this policy early on in the demonstration, the address was 111 Hobson Road in Naperville. And now I'm going to change it to 999 Fox Ridge Court in Woodridge, Illinois, and submit that. It comes back accepted. Now what we should see is the next time that the ADMN transaction, background transaction runs, we should see not only looking for work, but also processing work, or found work, excuse me. And indeed we do. It has found the record to process. And then we'll see ADMN process record successfully. And now if we go back to the menu for the contract retrieve, and I retrieve that same contract, if we look at the contract information, if we go to the Clients tab, look at Simple Man, and now we go down to the address, we will indeed see that the address has now been changed to 999 Fox Ridge Court, which indicates that the background processing ADMN transaction has worked successfully. And this will conclude the live demonstration portion of this presentation. With the live demonstration, I have successfully tested our foreground processing, our report generation processing, and our background processing, all with the IBM WebSphere JEE Application Server. Again, my name is Joe Fouts, and if you have any comments or questions regarding this presentation, please contact me at foutjoe@lidp.com. And if you would like to learn more about titanium, please visit www.lidp.com for more information. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.